Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and this is how to create an RPG in Unity, and welcome to episode 40. This tutorial we're going to take a look at creating a trap after the puzzle we have created here. We're going to look at some more environments, we're going to add in some new sounds, adjust the post-processing and also add in some lighting. Don't forget, click subscribe button and click the bell icon as well to stay up to date with every tutorial still to come in this series and everything else about game development on my channel. With that in mind, let's get to work. So at the end of the last tutorial, I did mention about getting our level up in place, but I kind of had second thoughts on that because I would like to allow ourselves more ways to gain experience before we can actually start leveling up, because there's no point kind of just getting experience from killing the spider and doing a quest and expecting that we can level up. So I want to get some mechanics of different things that we can do, more enemies in, more creative ways to get experience, so we can physically see our level increasing. So traps and environment. So up till now we have basically this terrain here, and I think for what we want to aim for, I'm not comfortable with the terrain as an actual object in this scene at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to disable it. And what I think I'd like instead is like some kind of cobblestone floor. But we also want something that we can use that will allow ourselves to just kind of fall, plummet, like a trap, as you would expect. So we're going to use a good old-fashioned cube for that. And I'm going to take this wall right here, hold Control, press D to duplicate. I'm going to rename this to floor 001. So this is going to represent our floor now. I'm going to keep it the same shape as the wall. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a new texture to it. And if you followed the entire series just as I have, you will have this mega fantasy props pack. And in here we have textures, and then we have a couple of different textures that we could probably use. So what we're going to do is attach this cobblestone texture to that game object. And we can see already just how cool that does look. Now what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to modify it just a little bit further, and I'm going to change it to albedo alpha, and I'm going to remove the metallic just for now, just to see how it looks for us. So let's remove it, and I'm going to increase the metallic. We can see how that looks. Now the one thing I want to be concerned about, I should say, is the fact of how this will look when we actually play the game with our post-processing. Now I don't want to have multiple of these all across the floor. Like, for example, I don't want it to be like this, or like that. Yes, it's seamless and yes, it's cool, but we're creating objects for no real purpose here. So what I would like to do is I'm going to change the material that is on this particular object and create a duplicate of that. So currently the material that's on here is the cobblestone wall 1 fixed. And if we go to the materials folder and find it right here, that one, just make sure it is the right one, and we can check if it's the right one by changing the color or something. You can see that it changes on there. So I'm going to have it as its original color for now, which is the kind of pink color. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the tiling to be, let's say, 10 by 10. Looks a little crazy, but that now means I can increase the scale to 60 by 60. So let's bring this into place just over here. And I'm going to leave that like that because we're going to develop more over here. Now, as it stands right now, it looks like it's not going to fit into this scene quite well. So we're going to need to modify that material. But let's press play and have a quick look. There we go. See, this looks a little bit crazy. So we need to work on that material itself to make it look less shiny, I guess is the right word to use. So let's take those cobblestones and let's decrease the metallic back to 0. And let's have metallic alpha and increase the smoothness. In fact, now that's probably going to make it worse. So you probably want to play around with some options. I mean, it's entirely up to you how you want it to look. You could mess around with the smoothness, make it look like that, I guess. Let's see how that looks. You just try and get the right kind of cobblestone look. Now, I do kind of like that now. So obviously, that's not how cobblestone sounds. So let's deal with a new sound effect for that cobblestone. So I'm going to, you can actually use the original FPS controller sounds if you wanted to, but I'm going to import 2 more just for my own sanity, which is step 1 and step 2. I'm also going to bring in water drip as well, because that's going to be the ambience that we have for the dungeon. So I'm going to bring step 1, step 2 into the effects folder. And in the ambience folder, I'm going to bring in water drip. So let's apply these now to the scene to make it seem a little bit more believable, as it were. So we need to go to the FPS controller, and let's go to the audio objects, and let's go to which one is it that has it all? I think it's that one. So ambient sound, and we need to drag and drop the ambient sound to there. Obviously, you can play around with it. I'm going to decrease the pitch to probably 0.8, maybe decrease the volume to 0.4, because I think it's quite high. Next thing we want to do is go to our first person controller and change the element 0 and element 1 on the grass step to the new steps that we've brought in. Again, you can use the default steps if you want to. They are fairly similar, but this is now how our scene should be. So the ambience, I've put the wrong one on, haven't I? I meant to put water drip. There we go. So let's see how that sounds now. Okay, so that seems a little bit better. Now, I'm going to play around with the bricks material to make them a little bit cooler. So let's change that to albedo. And already we can see changing to albedo gives it a bit of a different impression. So let's see how that looks now. So keep in mind, we're designing the overall kind of theme of this dungeon. And I think with how the floor looks, it looks a little bit shiny. But if we close this off now and see how it looks, well, I guess you can either close this off or get rid of the light. So if we choose directional light, turn it off and press play. There we go. So that's starting to look a little bit cooler. I'm quite happy with how this is starting to turn out. But let's actually play around with the post-processing. So on the post-processing, it's going to be somewhat different than the outside world, simply because it's a different environment. So to do that, what we're going to do is make a copy of this post-processing profile that we originally made. Hold Control, press D. And I'm going to call this one JVRPG_dungeon. So what we can do with this is we can play around to make it accurately fit better with this particular environment. So that new post-processing profile, let's go to our first person character. Let's select the little button next to it and select JVRPG Dungeon. And now if we select it down here and press play, we can change this real time. So let's see, let's increase our ambient occlusion intensity. You can see just how dark it gets if we increase it maximum. Radius you can play around with if you want to. Maybe we should have that as 2. Just be a bit careful when working with ambient occlusion. That's all I'm really going to say. You don't want to overdo it, as it were. We want to keep the motion blur, yes. Eye adaptation, let's turn that off and we can see just how dark it does become. Now we can use this to our advantage because we're not done with how this looks. So I'm going to stop that there. And in this section here, I think we might actually have a torch asset, if I'm honest. We do. So we have a torch asset. So let's bring it and place it onto the wall. Now this torch asset actually comes from the Decrepit Dungeon that we downloaded, I think quite a while ago, to be honest. I can't remember when it was, but either way, we already have that pre-made asset, which is great. So let's take it and let's have it on our wall. And this will provide just, I can't even describe how much this will make your dungeon look really awesome. So if we press play now, we should be able to see this kind of creepy torch up ahead. So we can, once again, use this to our advantage because we can manipulate how this asset provides environmental design to our game. So we could change the color of that torch ever so slightly to maybe a yellowy, slightly more yellowy color. But then we can also expand the range. So let's say the range is 15. We also want to change the render mode to important as well. And let's press play and see how that looks. Now that looks kind of cool. Quite happy with that. Also might be wise to have shadows. So I'm going to set soft shadows. And what else can we do? I think we're probably going to need another torch over here so we can see a little better. So let's design this with the whole idea of not having too much light, but enough light for us to see everything we need to. Because you can hide things in the dark in this style of game. And believe me, that's going to be something that is probably going to be worthwhile in the end. So I'm going to bring it up a little bit higher than what it is. So let's do the same with this one. Bring it up a little bit higher. And now let's see how that looks. Cool. Excellent. Brilliant. So you can see how this dungeon is coming together quite nicely. You don't want to have massive amounts of light sources in your game, but it's always handy to kind of keep an eye on where needs lighting up and where doesn't, simply because you could actually utilize the fact of turning lights off to save memory. While we're on that topic, it's probably wise to have a light here as well so we can see the blue gate. So what else could we do for environmental design? Well, there's tons of different assets that we've got here. Let's go into the prefabs and let's go on, I don't know, tables, and let's have a table here. Yeah, it may not be useful right now. However, we could utilize this later on and make it a useful part of the dungeon. So let's have the collider on there. We've got chains or something to make it really dungeony. We do have chains, so let's bring them in. That didn't quite work as intended. It doesn't want to bring it in. Never mind. I guess the whole idea is you can manipulate this in any kind of way. I'm not going to teach you how to suck eggs. I'm sure you guys know exactly how you want to design your game. So let's put that there. Okay, so let's quickly finish off how our post-processing is, and then let's start developing a trap. That's going to be kind of cool. So let's head to our first-person character. Back onto the post-processing profile, press play. Let's dull down the intensity of the bloom just a little bit. So let's have it as 1. And increase the softness just slightly. I guess we could have a dirt texture on just to see what that looks like. So let's search for dirt and let's have lens dirt 1 maybe. And then you can always change the intensity so you could see it on scene. I guess it's something you can work with. Post exposure, let's have this as 1, so just a little bit duller. Let's bring the temperature down or up. Let's have it back at 0. Contrast, obviously, how you increase it, the more you would see what it's like. But increase it down here, everything looks bland again. So just be careful with the contrast there. So I'm going to have that as 1.5. And the final thing I'm going to do is I am going to change how this cobble looks, because I think we're going to have to try and match the awesomeness of our wall. So we want albedo alpha, 0 metallic, and 1 smoothness. So let's do that. So albedo, 0, 1 on the smoothness, and let's see how that looks now. Okay, so I'm not happy with how that looks actually now I think about it. So let's see what we can do to make this look a little bit better. Let's take the occlusion away. So none. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Let's change the albedo to white. Let's decrease the smoothness. How does that look? Are we happy with that? I think it could be better, but I think for now at least it's something you should really work with. You shouldn't just leave it to me, as it were. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all the material properties. So I'm going to click this little option here, copy material properties, stop the game, and repaste them just in case. So I think in newer versions of Unity it may already do it for you. In older versions of Unity it may not. Just be mindful when doing it. One last thing that I didn't play around with then, which maybe we should have done, is the normal map. So if we set that to 0, I'm not sure about that. What about 5? How's that look? It looks a little bit... It looks okay. I might leave it at 5 actually, just to, you know, it's your game at the end of the day. You design it how you want to. So I'm going to save my scene. So let's design a trap now. So we get this far. We come through the gate. We walk a little bit further. And all of a sudden, zhoof, we kind of fall through the floor, as it were. We have a bit of a trap door. So let's design a trap door. Now that's going to be a bit of fun. So let's build a corridor a little bit further along to here. And let's... Now, I'm thinking, should we either make the entire section a trapdoor and it's just the way you go into the dungeon, or should we do a separate option? I'm thinking, let's do it's the only way to go. I guess you could always change it if you want to. So the way we're going to do this is let's take this wall, hold Control, press D, and bring it down into place around about here. Let's make it thin. So we're going to have, what size we're going to make this? It's going to be quite thin, so let's have 0.5 on the Y and bring it down to probably about there, maybe. Let's have it as... I'm just trying to think of the best way of doing this, guys. I'm thinking we should probably have it like that. Let's just align it there. Bring it across here. And let's just have it wooden. So let's search for wood in our asset window. And let's just apply this one. There we go. So this is going to be our wooden trapdoor. And let's have some more walls, just so as everything is nice and cozy. Looks all good. Hold Control, press D, duplicate, and once again. So we're going to trick the player at this point. So we're going to have this here, and we're going to make it look like a corridor comes off and goes this way, when in actual fact it doesn't, because there's no other way to go but down. So let's bring all this in to make it go to there. And let's take this floor, hold Control, press D to duplicate, bring it into position to about there. Probably going to need to do that a little bit better. And it's not quite aligned, so a little bit more. There we go. So that's now aligned. So you can imagine a player coming this way. Next thing you know, this trapdoor opens. So let's make this trapdoor an actual trap. So let's rename it and call it trap door. And then within that, we're going to right click and insert a cube. And this cube is going to be the actual rotation of it. So it's going to be the hinge. So let's decrease the size to 0.1. 0.1, no, on the Y it should be 0.1, and I'm going to uncouple it from there and call this trap door hinge, and let's actually make it a bit more hinge like. So if we have it theoretically as a hinge, bring it to about here. So you're going to want to have it roughly on top there. So it's just a case of lining it up. Turn off the mesh renderer. Turn off the box collider. And then recouple trapdoor onto it. And then if we swing that hinge on the X, not the X. There we go. we can see that how that's going to react as a trapdoor. So hopefully you guys can see how we're going to make that a trapdoor. We are now going to animate it. So let's go to our animations folder. Let's go to Dungeon 01. And let's go to our animation tab and click create and have trap door anim. So we're going to make this whole mechanic work, and next tutorial obviously we're going to really delve into a little bit more of it. So press record, let's set that first keyframe, and we're always going to be using the rotation on the X. So set it to any number, then set it back to 0, which means you're setting that first keyframe. Now we want this to kind of fall over the course of, let's say, half a second. We're in 60 frames a second, so let's go to the 30th frame. And by the 30th frame, we want the trapdoor to have done that. So we fall straight through. And press the record button again, and then head to the trapdoor anim, untick loop time, and on the trapdoor itself, turn off the... In fact, let me just quickly press play, because I think it's going to play anyway, isn't it? So let's just make sure that it is open. Yeah, that's fine. So then turn off the animator. Now the next thing we're going to need to do is create a trigger for that to occur. So let's add in game object, 3D object, and a cube, and this is going to be the trigger. So it's going to trigger somewhere about here. So you just need to expand the trigger to be in place. 0.3, expand that outwards. A bit smaller, I think, so 5.8. And tall on the Y, so tab 2. And there we go. So there's our trigger. So let's untick mesh renderer, tick is trigger on the box collider, and now let's create that script. So head to the scripts folder and go to Dungeon 01, right click, create C# script, and let's call this trapdoor trig. And open that up in Visual Studio. So basically all we're going to do here is work on the principle of an actual player walking into this. When we walk into it, the trapdoor just opens. It's as simple as that. So once this is all loaded, we'll write this script. Do you know what, sometimes guys, starting up Visual Studio can be a bit of a pain. So it just takes so long at times, and it kind of irritates me. I'm sure it irritates a lot of you guys as well, especially if you've been doing this for 40 tutorials. So, come on, sometime today we have work to be done. Sometime today. Almost. I feel like I waste half my life waiting for this. Okay, so let's get rid of void start, void update. We do not need those, at least for now. And we're going to need a variable. Public game object. And it's going to be trapdoor, semicolon. And then we'll have void on trigger enter. Doesn't need to be private, so we can get rid of that. That's fine. And let's say that trapdoor dot get component, spiky brackets, animator, open close bracket, dot enabled, goodness me, equals true, semicolon, and save. Now, you could theoretically go a little bit further with this if you wanted to, and in fact we probably should do now I think about it, just in case. As it stands, I don't think anything else is going to interact with this trigger. I think it's only going to be the player, because we're not going to have enemies here. We're going to have them further down inside the dungeon. But that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't actually set a tag. So tag is probably something we're going to deal with next tutorial, because I think we really should deal with them, mainly because they're very handy. But for now, for all intents and purposes, this trigger will do just fine. So let's rename that cube to trap trigger. Let's add the trapdoor trigger to that. And then let's add the trapdoor hinge to the trapdoor variable. And let's press play. We should try all this out now. So we know that's going to open that. So we can go this way. There's our trapdoor. and it's just opened on us. Obviously, we're going to fall simply because it did open. What I might do actually, just to kind of retest that so we can see it a little bit better, is I'm going to put a torch in this corridor so we actually get a little bit of light so we can see everything happening. So let's bring that up against the wall. And there we go. And move it closer to that trapdoor. And let's try once again while I tell you what we're going to do in the next tutorial. So next time, as I said, we are going to work with tags because tags are important. We're going to basically build up this trap a little bit more. There we go. So you can see the trapdoor open. We've kind of got ourselves glitched to it though. So we can kind of get back up, but we can see the trapdoor working. So we're going to fix that little glitch as well. And I think we're going to deal a little bit more with environment as well, because environment is vital, it's important, and I think we should slowly build up what we need to within this game. So yeah, next tutorial, tags, more on this trapdoor, more of the level underneath, more environmental design, and we'll probably start looking at enemies as well. So until that next tutorial, guys, thank you very much for watching.